Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist of the Abyss, and you're watching my review for Strike the Blood, episode 20. And in this episode, we start the new arc, The Return of the Alchemist, or The Alchemist's Return, either one. Crunchyroll always switches up their wording of things, all the time it's weird. But this is the start of the new arc, and we meet the Alchemist dude right in the beginning. We see Kensei again, Bakura, and he gets attacked by Yukikaji, alright? Wait, what's his name? Amatsuka Ko or something like that? Ko. His name is Ko, alright? He's voiced by Yukikaji, who's gotten like 50 million different roles recently. He's getting a little bit too popular. I'm actually kind of getting tired of his voice now. But yeah, Ko shows up, and he turned a bunch of guards into silver, or at least he coated them with silver so that they couldn't move. But he did all that so he could get to Bakura and attack him and get the wise man's blood, which is like this red orb that is apparently his master's keepsake. Okay, and obviously Bakura ends up surviving because Bakura always finds a way to survive. Always, it's like impossible to kill that dude, right? So of course Kensei, being the Bakura of Strike the Blood, he ended up surviving. And while Ko was attacking him, he said that he was going to take a part of his body that his master stole from him. His master being Nina Adalard. Nina Adalard. Yeah, something like Adalard. Yeah, so the explanation behind that we get from a Star King later on in the episode, but before we actually get there, we see Himeraki getting a message from the Lion King organization. And pretty much what they're telling her is that since her school has that training camp coming up for the middle schoolers, or the first years of whatever year they're in, the third year of middle school, which is like ninth grade. Whichever year it doesn't really matter. The point is that they're going on this training camp, right? What it is they're training for, I don't know, but whatever. It's a training camp. And it's for 4 days, and the Lion King organization tells her that she can go to the training camp, and for those 4 days, ignore her duties of being an observer for Kojo, for the fourth progenitor. So, yeah, she ends up, later on in the episode, she ends up going to the Lion King organization branch on Itagami Island, giving them the Schnee Waltz or whatever, blah, 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 Lance thing. We see well, we don't see her teacher. Well, I'll get to that when I get to it. Let me stop skipping ahead. I'm going all through the episode now. When Himeragi is telling Kojo this, that she's going to be let off of duty for 4 days for the training camp, she is with him, but they're also with Nagisa and Kanon. And they end up going to shop for underwear. So Kojo stays outside, but Kanon had this funny line where she was talking about how she wanted to know what Kojo's preferences were, so she wanted him to come inside too, but he turned her down. That was kind of funny. But then Ko shows up. Okay, Ko shows up with the smell of blood on him. Okay, and he wants Kanon, but Kanon had already left. All of them had already left except for Kojo, and he attacks Kojo. He introduces himself by calling himself the Seeker of Truth. And just from that alone, Himeragi is able to find out that he's an alchemist, because Himeragi, after people start running away and screaming, Himeragi kind of knows something's going on. So she goes, cuts his arm off. He ends up absorbing this like pole thing in order to regenerate it. He can transform his limbs into like weapons. He used a sword. He could do a lot of things with his arms. I mean, just anything really. So, the dude's an alchemist. He can just do whatever he freaking wants to, I guess. But since both Kojo and Himeragi are there, he decides to retreat. He also mentions in some type of incident 5 years ago at that monastery that Kanon keeps the cats at. Yeah, so that's it for that scene. There was some comedy here with Himeragi's shirt being unbuttoned the entire time. That was kind of funny. But after that incident with Kojo decides to learn more about alchemists. So he goes to Natsuki, except Natsuki's not in her office. Astarte is. So he asks Astarte, because Astarte is a homunculus, and homunculi are created by alchemists. If you've watched Fullmetal Alchemist or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, or you've read the manga, then you would know that. So, yeah, he goes to the homunculus and asks her what alchemists are, what their goals are, and she tells him that their goal is to surpass humans pretty much and to become gods essentially. They want to become immortal and keep their youthful bodies and things like that. All right, so pretty much examples of that are angels, kind of. They want to be less flawed versions of angels because I don't know if Ken was like if her body would have stayed young in that state, but she had surpassed a human and she was close to being a god. So not a god, an angel, but like she was above human. She had surpassed human. So something like that. Kojo is another example Astarte points out because he's a human who turned into a progenitor who is immortal. Though, and she says the other example would be the wise man's blood, which was created by Nina Adelard in order to become immortal. Um, so he remembers that, Nina Adelard, he remembers that Ko had mentioned Adelard's monastery, so he decides, okay, Adelard's monastery, I need to find out about that. When I need information, who do I go to? Asagi, alright? So he asks Asagi about Adelard's monastery, and she doesn't really know anything about it. All the data in the man-made island organization, management, whatever corporation place, all the data they have on it was erased by someone. Okay, which is suspicious. So Asagi decides that she wants to check it out too. So not just Kojo, but she goes with him to check out the monastery and see if there's anything going on there, see if there's any clues they can get. Well, that's why Kojo is going. Um, that and the fact that Ko might be there and he didn't want him to run into Canon if she was there. Asagi doesn't really know why they're going there. Um, but Kojo, while he's walking with Asagi there, he ends up getting hit out of nowhere by like an air blade or like wind or something. Like he gets hit by something, and he falls down. That caught me off guard. So Asagi goes to see what happened, and he pulls her down so that she doesn't get hit by it either. Turns out that Natsuki was the one that did it, and time skip a tiny bit, and we learn that the island guard is there at the monastery. And Natsuki just starts explaining the situation, what happened to Bakura, Kensei, that Ko was the one that did it. She confirms that he's after Canon as well because Kojo tells her what happened before, so yeah, Natsuki this was just information pretty much, a way for different characters to learn different pieces of information that other characters knew. And after that, this is when we go to the Lion King organization branch on Itagami Island. This was this was actually a pretty funny scene because they were in the red light district. You saw a bunch of love hotels everywhere. All right, this was hilarious, and everything Himeragi was saying was like it was like she wanted to go into the love hotel with Kojo, but that's not what she meant at all, and she never realized that that's what it sounded like. So that was pretty funny. But then, like that, it turns into the branch for the Itogami Island branch of the Lion King organization. That's where we meet Yukari Endo, who is Himuragi's teacher, and she's talking through a cat, which is by far one of the most original ideas I've ever seen. But anyway, the other thing we see there is a Shikigami based off of Sayako, which was funny. It was actually pretty funny. Apparently, the reason why the Shikigami was based off of her was because it's a penalty for using equipment without permission. So I'm not complaining. All right, not complaining. But Hikari ends up talking with Kojo for a little bit, talking with Himeragi too. She tells Himeragi that she doesn't think far ahead enough. She doesn't look ahead. She just takes things one step at a time. When something happens, and she tries to deal with it, but she never tries to think, well, I'm observing the fourth progenitor. I know of this group and that group, this group, that group. Maybe just maybe one of these groups is going to get involved with Kojo. Maybe I should come up with some plans in case some of these groups get involved with Kojo, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So she's just telling Himeragi to think ahead more. And she also mentions to Kojo that she knew of Rora. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that scene. The rest of the episode kind of focuses on Ko and Asagi. Ko went to the monastery with some guys, one of which was responsible for saving him in that incident 5 years ago at the monastery. Ko is talking about how when the wise man's blood merges with hardcore, you're able to get the immortality that alchemists seek while also retaining your ego. And when he says retaining your ego, he's talking about ego in terms of like ego, superego, and id. Okay, your id and your superego are like that devil and angel that sit on your shoulders telling you to do evil things or to do good things. And your ego would be you trying to decide which one to go with, which decision to go with, or to try and merge them together to form one actual plan of action. Um, so when he says that you retain your ego, he just means you're maintaining your mental faculties. You're not becoming a mindless zombie who's being controlled, or you're not being controlled by something. You're yourself pretty much. Um, and while Ko is doing all this stuff, merging the wise men's blood with hardcore, and that one guy who saved him is trying to merge with it too and get immortality, Asagi ends up going there looking for her earring, because when Kojo pushed her down earlier, the earring came off. So she's talking with Kojo on the phone. He tries to tell her, no, get away, the monastery is dangerous. Did you not hear a single thing that Natsuki was talking about? Alright, but she just doesn't really listen, and she keeps looking for the earring, and Kojo keeps trying to convince her time after time to just leave, but she just won't. She just won't. For plot reasons, she just could not leave. Alright, and we see, as she gets closer and closer to the monastery, we see the hardcore slash Nina Adelard, because her consciousness is like sealed inside of it, so it starts to devour that dude who saved Ko a long time, like 5 years ago. And Ko declares that in order to get immortality, he has to destroy Nina from the inside before she finishes awakening. Which, I guess when he says destroy her from the, what he ended up doing was he had like something embedded into that one dude's chest, and they exploded, and then that was like poison to Nina Adelard when she tried to devour him. So I guess she's trying to devour people's life forces in order to fully awaken and fully revive, or something along those lines. Um, and in order to get immortality, he has to defeat her and then take the immortality from her? Or does he have to be the one to inhabit the hardcore? Oh no, it can't be that, because at the end of the episode, well, what ends up happening is that Ko ends up seeing Asagi, and he slashes her right down the middle of the chest. Nina escapes, alright? And since Nina escapes, I mean, she can't really be inhabiting the hardcore anymore, so it can't be that. So for some, is it that she's the one who's, no, she's not fused with Wiseman's blood, because he had Wiseman's blood. He had the thing, the orb in his hand, so that line was kind of confusing. It was kind of confusing. I guess I could just take it at face value and just say he needs to defeat her to get immortality. Just make it really simple. I don't really want to do that though, but it was kind of, his line was kind of confusing. It could mean a couple things, like I already said. So yeah. But the big news for this episode is that Asagi gets slashed. She's human, so it's not looking too good for her. However, we see at the end of the episode her hand reaches out and touches this little mini red orb. And at first, the way it looked, I thought it was a bottle cap at first, but that didn't make any sense. On closer inspection, it looked like, I could tell it was a red orb. So the theory out there is that it's part of Wiseman's blood, and that Asagi, by getting that piece of Wiseman's blood, is going to gain, not necessarily gain immortality and eternal youth, but be saved at the very least. I don't think she'll legit gain immortality, because if she could gain immortality that simply, then why would Ko be going through all this trouble to get rid of Nina Adelard? So I don't think she's going to get legit immortality, but I think that will at least be one of the ways that she ends up getting saved, because she's not going to die. She's not. She's Asagi. All right. I mean, she's too important to the story to die. She's a main character. It's just not going to happen. All right. So she's going to be saved somehow, and it's probably going to involve Wiseman's blood. But yeah, that's it for this episode. In the preview, we saw Yaze, so he's going to get back involved in things. We also saw this scene. It looked like Nagisa and Himiragi were kissing. That was weird. But that's real. That's it for this episode. Overall, I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10, and that 0.5 is just because of the ending, really. But yeah, overall, the episode was mostly 7 out of 10. That, like I said, the 0.5 comes from the ending with Asagi. So yeah, that's it. This episode gets a 7.5 out of 10. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.「